While I was funding her master's degree, my girlfriend told her friends, "He's just my ATM until someone better comes along." Hello Reddit. I'm finally ready to share the full narrative of this storm that occurred approximately 8 months ago. It turned out that my 3-year girlfriend was preparing her breakup with her married professor by using me as her personal financial account. She believed that she was far more intelligent than the stupid HVAC man. It turns out that this stupid HVAC guy is more adept at following a paper trail than her brilliant professor is at hiding one. This is how it all came to pass and why karma was more severe than a Texas summer without air conditioning. I'm a 32-year-old man named Sam, and I run a mid-sized HVAC business in North Dallas. Began with nothing at all. I grew up in an East Texas trailer park with a single mother who worked 2 jobs at a truck stop diner to provide for us. Big Jim, a local HVAC contractor, took pity on me and taught me the ropes when I began working weekends at the age of 16. While my classmates were anxious about prom, I spent my final year of high school learning how to braze copper wires and climbing through attics. I saved every cent I could after graduating and working for Jim full-time for 6 years while living in a studio apartment that was essentially a closet with a hot plate. Jim was old school, paid in cash, taught me business in addition to technical skills, and sold me his customer list for $15,000 after he retired. That served as the cornerstone of my own business. In 2018, I opened Sam Climate Solutions, operating out of a dilapidated Ford van that I had purchased for $8,500. The first year was tough, living on peanut butter sandwiches and coffee from the gas station, sleeping for 4 hours every night for 70-odd weeks. But I was committed to creating something tangible. I had employed my first worker by the 2nd year. By the 3rd year, I was bidding on commercial work and had 4 guys. We now have a 4,000 square foot store with 6 service cars, 8 full-time staff, and an annual revenue of roughly $380,000 after expenses. From massive commercial installations to household service calls, we can handle it all. We were awarded a $200,000 contract last month to install temperature control equipment in a brand new medical facility. For a youngster from a trailer park who began with a borrowed toolbox, it's not bad. The business plan is straightforward. Be on time. The first time, do it correctly. Set reasonable prices. And be like family to your customers. We have certifications in every field. Building automation systems, gas lines, electrical, refrigeration, and ductwork design. I hold licenses in Louisiana, Oklahoma, and Texas. My workers have full benefits and a good wage. Additionally, the waiting list for big installations is 6 months long. 4 years ago, I purchased a sturdy 2,400 square foot home in Plano that included a 3-car garage that I turned into a workshop. It's nothing special, but it has solid foundations and potential. I have been making extra principal payments each month, and the monthly mortgage payment of $2,800 is doable. I have roughly $125,000 in business savings, an additional $75,000 in personal accounts, and a rising retirement portfolio. I am the most disciplined 32-year-old I have ever dealt with, according to my financial advisor. When I was 8 years old, my father left. I therefore discovered early on that you can only rely on yourself. Developed credit gradually and never had any debt other than business and home loans. And before I make a big buy, I spend months researching it. I have 40,000 miles on my 2019 F-250 crew cab, which I purchased secondhand. Dependable, realistic, and paid off in 3 years as opposed to 6. Could I afford a more expensive item? Yes, but vehicles are not status symbols. They are tools. I apply that attitude to all aspects of my life. Because they last, I wear Carhartt shirts and Wrangler pants to work. Because the cuisine is better and less expensive, I prefer to eat lunch at neighborhood diners rather than hip places. I fix things that break rather than buying new ones, change my own oil, and mow my own lawn. The lesson that resonated with Sam was Mom's constant reminder. Sam, a champagne taste on a beer budget leads to bankruptcy. I met a 26-year-old woman named Jessica there. As she pursued her master's degree in educational psychology, she worked part-time at the campus bookshop. We first met during a July heat wave when I was working on emergency AC repairs at the school center. When the temperature outside reached 108 degrees, their 20-year-old system eventually failed. She joked that I was essentially a superhero for bringing cold air back to suffering kids while she was at the information desk and looked utterly miserable in the 90 degrees building. She was stunning, with green eyes and auburn hair, and she always wore clothes straight out of a magazine. Astute, too, or so I believed. I could talk about research methods, educational policy, and psychology theory. She asked insightful questions about entrepreneurship and growth plans throughout our first few dates, and she seemed genuinely interested in my business. She even said she was amazed by my ability to simplify hard things when she came to the store to watch me explain a major commercial installation to a client. Her living circumstances ought to have been the first warning sign. 26-year-old graduate student living in a posh apartment complex that cost $1,800 a month, including utilities, while working part-time in retail. The Meridian at City Place features a resort-style pool, stainless steel appliances, marble countertops, and more. She claimed that her parents assisted with expenses when I questioned how she managed to pay for it out of her bookshop earnings. Her parents, Rob and Linda, were from Shreveport, and I had met them. He was a supervisor of city maintenance. She was the principal of a middle school. Pleasant, earthy individuals, but clearly not wealthy enough to afford a fancy condo. They had been paying for their own modest 1,200 square foot home for the past 20 years. I reasoned that perhaps they were making sacrifices for their daughter's education, but something didn't match up. Jessica's taste in everything was upscale. Nordstrom's designer clothing, $200 pants, $80 face creams, and organic grocery store items. She had used all of her credit cards. She had this strange belief that everything would miraculously work out because she was educated and deserved better things. I saw the statements when she left them lying around, but she would dismiss my worries with the words, "I'll figure it out when I graduate and get a real job." After 6 months of dating, she proposed that they move in together. She said it made financial sense. She might pay off her credit cards more quickly and save money on rent. She made strong points about how we might build our future together and how much simpler it would be to arrange our schedules, which initially made me cautious. The actual cost began at that point. For Jessica's graduation study, she required a suitable workspace. We therefore turned the extra bedroom into her workspace. She selected everything. $1,200 for an executive desk, $800 for an ergonomic chair, $900 for bespoke bookshelves, $300 for a filing system, and $200 for a desk lamp, which she said was necessary to avoid eye strain when conducting lengthy research. $3,200 was taken out of my company account in total. For her unpaid internship at a counseling facility, she required a dependable vehicle. We went car shopping because her old Honda was burning oil and had 180,000 miles on it. A certified pre-owned Camry or Accord was what I recommended. Good resale value, reasonably priced, and dependable. However, Jessica fell in love with a brand new, fully equipped 2022 Honda Accord Touring. $32,500 after taxes and fees, with leather seats, GPS, and a high-end sound system. She had terrible credit, $18,000 in maxed out cards, and a $580 score. I was forced to co-sign as a result. The monthly installments were $485 plus $180 for full coverage insurance because she has a history of fender benders and speeding tickets. Her minimal credit card payments were barely met by her part-time salary, so I made the payments. She needed to dress professionally for presentations and conferences. We visited J.C. Crew, Banana Republic, and Nordstrom once a month for the following year. Shoes, accessories, blouses, and business suits. Her credit card was maxed out, so my credit card was charged for the easy $3,000 worth of clothes. Sam, you'll both benefit from me looking professional once I'm a licensed therapist. This is an investment in our future, she would say. But the biggest expense was her tuition. Jessica had been paying out-of-state rates, $17,500 per semester, and had already accrued $65,000 in student loans for her bachelor's degree. When she began her master's program, she came to me in tears about how her studies were being affected by financial stress. She showed me salary data, job projections, and career advancement paths, making it seem like paying for her education was the best investment I could make. I was a fool. Sam, I can't concentrate on my thesis when I'm always worried about money. This degree is going to change our entire future. Licensed therapists start at $75,000, and with my research focus, I could be making six figures within 5 years. The arrangement was straightforward. I would take care of all the major expenses while she concentrated on her studies, and she would manage the household and support the growth of my business. In reality, she spent most of her days at the university studying while I worked 53 weeks, returning home to a messy house and DoorDash containers. I paid her tuition for 2 semesters, $35,000 out of my business savings, because I loved her, believed in her potential, and wanted to support her dreams. She would become defensive when I brought up the topic of household chores. I'm not your maid, Sam. I'm working toward a professional degree that requires intense focus. My education has to come first right now. She would say this while sitting in the office I furnished, wearing a $300 Lululemon outfit I'd bought her, and typing on the $2,800 MacBook Pro I'd bought for her research needs. After she moved in, the dynamic of our relationship changed, and instead of being a grateful, loving girlfriend who valued my hard work, she became critical and entitled, remarking that I should dress more professionally for client meetings. You're the business owner now, so you should focus on management and sales, not getting your hands dirty. I tried explaining that HVAC work requires hands-on troubleshooting, that my customers valued my personal expertise, and that I couldn't build relationships sitting in an office. She would nod as if she understood, but her expression suggested she thought I was making excuses for not wanting to elevate myself. She would wrinkle her nose when I returned home filthy from crawling through attics or working around industrial equipment. I got the distinct impression that her graduate school friends, a pretentious group who would drink $20 bottles of wine I paid for, and talk about socioeconomic paradigms and educational inequities, saw me as the blue-collar boyfriend who didn't belong in their intellectual discussions and began to visit more frequently. One evening, I overheard Melissa, a doctoral candidate in sociology, tell Jessica, "You're so lucky to have someone who can support your academic goals. Not everyone is able to locate a partner who is prepared to make educational investments." Her use of the word partner sounded like a sponsor or benefactor. Dr. Richard Whitmore, a 45-year-old psychology professor who specialized in educational assessment and testing, was Jessica's thesis advisor. She spoke about him frequently, praising his brilliance, his revolutionary contributions to the field, and how fortunate she was to have worked with him. Her thesis was about culturally responsive assessment methodologies for diverse student populations. A mouthful she'd recite like it was going to cure cancer. She would stay late at the university for research meetings with Dr. Whitmore, sometimes not returning home until 10 or 11 p.m. When I asked about these long sessions, she would explain how complicated her research was, how Dr. Whitmore demanded perfection from the students, and how she was working on something that could change educational psychology. The first real warning sign came at a university fundraising event that Jessica insisted we attend, where I paid $600 for a charcoal gray suit from Men's Warehouse that she approved of because it made me look more professional, and I bought a $500 table sponsorship. The event was full of local business leaders, professors, graduate students, and donors, and Jessica introduced me to her academic circle as Sam, who owns his own HVAC company. When people asked follow-up questions about my work, Jessica would quickly reroute the conversation to her thesis research or Dr. Whitmore's latest publication, which was attended by his wife, Elena, a stylish woman in her early 40s who appeared bored by the academic crowd. That introduction always bothered me, not because Sam was my boyfriend or because Sam built a successful business from scratch, but simply because Sam runs HVAC, as if it were a temporary job rather than a career I'd built from nothing. He told the group around us, really groundbreaking research that could reshape how we approach educational assessment for diverse student populations. Whitmore hardly acknowledged me when Jessica introduced us, then returned his full attention to her. Jessica's been doing exceptional work on her thesis. I encouraged her to consider pursuing doctoral studies after graduation, and I noticed how she positioned herself closer to him throughout the meeting. "Of course, we're close," she snapped when I mentioned that she seemed to have a particularly close relationship with her advisor. "He's guiding my entire academic future," she said, recalling how she laughed a little too enthusiastically at his remarks, how she kept finding excuses to touch his arm during conversations. and how she hung on every word he said as if he were imparting divine wisdom. Whether I get into a prestigious PhD school or accept a lousy counseling position at a community health clinic depends on this thesis. Doctorate course? After graduation, I assumed you would start working so we could start making plans for the future. Plans changed, Sam. Dr. Whitmore believes I have genuine potential for academic research. A PhD would open up a lot more doors, including university employment, research funding, and consultancy chances, she said with a dismissive wave of her hand. 3 months before her planned graduation, things started to get strange. Jessica's schedule became even more unpredictable. She would leave early for research meetings and return home late, smelling like expensive cologne that was definitely not mine. She also started dressing differently, more sophisticatedly, and more expensively. We would be discussing a completely different income level, more years of school, more tuition payments, and more excuses for why she couldn't contribute financially to our relationship. She answered, "Doctor," in response to my remark about a new dress. When I questioned Whitmore about it, she said that her research contained sensitive data that required confidentiality protocols. Whitmore also suggested that she needed to present more professionally for upcoming academic conferences. She also became secretive about her phone and laptop, which she used to leave lying around carelessly. Now, she would quickly close her laptop when I entered the room and keep her phone face down during dinner. Every request included thorough justifications of how important these items were to her academic success, and I began to notice other changes as well. The costs kept rising. $200 for a new professional wardrobe for conference. Presentations. $1,800 for academic conference registration fees. $900 for research materials and books. $3,200 for a new laptop because her current one was too slow for data analysis. My friend Jake invited us to a Rangers game, but she said I should broaden my social circle beyond those who work with their hands. When I suggested that I take my employees fishing for a weekend as a team-building activity, she said it sounded unprofessional and could damage my company's reputation. Her academic friends also began to treat me differently, asking me snide questions about my long-term career goals and whether I intend to stay in the trade forever. The last straw was when I overheard a phone conversation that changed everything. I had come home early from a service call that was canceled. The customer's unit started working again before I arrived, which happens occasionally, and I heard Jessica talking in her office. Bradley, a particularly annoying doctoral candidate, asked if I had ever considered moving to the management side of the HVAC industry. I froze in the hallway, not believing what I was hearing. "Richard, I've been patient, but I need to know we're actually moving forward with our plans. I know it's complicated, but Sam is just my financial placeholder until everything gets sorted out with Elena. He's been useful for paying my expenses and keeping me stable, but obviously, this isn't permanent." My blood went cold. No, he doesn't suspect anything. He's too busy working to notice what's really happening, and besides, he's not exactly the type to pick up on subtle social cues. Blue-collar guys aren't known for their emotional intelligence or sophisticated thinking. I can't keep pretending with Sam much longer. It's getting harder to act grateful when he talks about our future together and expanding the business. "I'll see you tonight at the Agilus." Sam believes I'm studying late at the library again. He never questions my academic schedule. It's like having the perfect alibi built into our relationship. Trust me, the moment you're free from Elena, I'm done here. I just need to make sure I have somewhere stable to land financially. And obviously I'll need help transitioning until I can access my inheritance. Inheritance? What inheritance? Jessica had never mentioned any family money beyond her parents' modest assistance with expenses. I drove to my office and sat in the parking lot for 2 hours, processing what I'd heard. Jessica wasn't just cheating. She was running a long scam, using me to fund her lifestyle while planning her exit strategy with her married professor. Apparently, there was family money she'd never mentioned, which explained her entitled attitude about money. I quietly backed away and left the house, my mind reeling. 3 years together, $50,000 plus in tuition, car payments, and expenses, all while she saw me as a financial placeholder and made fun of my intelligence behind my back. I went into full investigation mode that night. I had built a successful business by being thorough and methodical, and I used those same skills to find out the truth about my relationship. I started by installing a covert recording app on our shared iPad that Jessica used for research. Since it was my device, my internet plan, and my house, it was completely legal. The app recorded audio whenever the device was activated and stored it all in a cloud account she was unaware of. Next, I began looking through our phone records through my account portal, and Jessica's line revealed hours of conversations with Dr. Whitmore, frequently late at night when she claimed to be studying. Then I began to follow the money more closely, requesting detailed statements for all the accounts and credit cards I'd been helping her with. What I discovered was shocking. In addition to the obvious expenses I knew about, there were charges at upscale restaurants, spa treatments, Victoria's Secret, jewelry stores, and luxury hotels, all while she claimed to be broke and stressed about money. There were also frequent calls to an unknown number that a reverse lookup showed belonged to the Agilis Hotel downtown, a posh establishment with rooms starting at $300 per night. I also started researching Dr. Whitmore himself. According to his university bio, he had impressive credentials, a PhD from Columbia, department head, and published researcher with expertise in educational assessment. However, when I looked more closely through academic databases and Google Scholar, I discovered some intriguing trends. Dr. Whitmore's publications were impressive in quantity but dubious in quality, with many appearing in obscure journals that do not undergo rigorous peer review. And most of his research citations were self-references or quotes from colleagues at the same university. His work was remarkably insignificant for someone who was supposedly revolutionizing the field outside of his immediate circle. And from LinkedIn and professional networks, I discovered some troubling information. Several former graduate students had left negative reviews about his mentoring style, though they were carefully worded to avoid direct accusations. There were hints about inappropriate relationships and favoritism that made me wonder if Jessica was just the latest in a pattern. I collected evidence in a methodical manner over the course of the next 2 weeks while acting normally around Jessica. Richard, I'm getting tired of acting like I'm grateful every time Sam pays for something. Yesterday, he mentioned wanting to look at engagement rings after I graduate, and I almost puked in my mouth. The iPad recordings were especially damning because they captured multiple conversations between her and Dr. Whitmore that exposed the full extent of their relationship and future plans. Recording number 1 shows Jessica calling Dr. Whitmore from our kitchen while I was ostensibly at work. This isn't the life I'm meant for, Richard. I have a master's degree. Remember what we discussed about your family situation? Your grandmother's trust fund becomes accessible when you turn 30, which is only 18 months away. Be patient, darling. Elena's lawyers are being difficult about the custody arrangement, but we're making progress. The private investigator confirmed what we needed about her spending habits. I know, but it's getting harder to fake enthusiasm. The suite at the Agilis was perfect tonight. I just wish we didn't have to sneak around like this much longer. Soon, darling. I've got the Oxford visiting professor position confirmed for next fall. We can start fresh in England while Elena fights over assets she'll never get. Trust fund. Oxford sabbatical. This was the first time I'd heard of any of this. The lovely thing about academic sabbaticals is that they're hard to challenge legally. The word tradesman hit like a physical blow. I'd built a business that employed 8 people and generated nearly $400,000 annually. But to them, I was just a tradesman. Recording number 3, the most damaging conversation, was recorded just days before I planned to confront her. Jessica, you can't let misplaced guilt derail your actual future. You're meant for intellectual pursuits and academic excellence, not playing house with a tradesman. What about Sam? He's going to be devastated when I leave. I feel bad. Richard, during our research meeting yesterday, I told my study group about our plans, and they thought it was very romantic. The professor and his star student running away together like they were in a movie. What exactly did you tell them? We need to be careful about discretion until Elena's situation is resolved. It's just that I've been playing the long game with Sam while waiting for you to get free. Sarah asked how I kept him interested and paying for everything for so long, and I replied, it's amazing what men will fund when they think they're investing in a future with me. Both of them genuinely laughed at my expense. Sam paid for the dress you loved at the faculty dinner, the jewelry I wore to the conference in Austin, and even my thesis, research materials, and conference fees. He claims to be funding my education, but in reality, he's funding our relationship. I had to stop the recording and go outside because the casual cruelty in her voice was worse than the infidelity itself. Equipped with this evidence, I began to prepare my response because this was no longer just about a cheating girlfriend. I first contacted my lawyer, Tom Rodriguez, who had assisted me with business contracts and incorporation, and explained the situation, asking about my options for recovering the money I had paid for Jessica's tuition and expenses. Tom was intrigued by the recordings and said I had a solid case for civil fraud, especially with documented evidence of intentional deception. "Sam, this isn't just relationship drama," Tom said after reviewing the evidence. This was about systematic fraud, a professor abusing his position with students, and possibly federal crimes. The recordings make it impossible for her to claim misunderstanding. Then I began to investigate Dr. Whitmore more thoroughly. I asked a high school friend who worked in university administration at UT Dallas to run Dr. Whitmore's credentials through unofficial channels, and the results were shocking. She systematically misrepresented her intentions and financial situation to extract money from him. That's textbook fraud. More significantly, my friend found that Dr. Whitmore had been operating a side business selling phony transcripts and diplomas to international students who needed credentials for visa applications, using his university access to create official-looking documents that would pass initial scrutiny, but weren't supported by actual coursework. DR. Whitmore's Columbia PhD was legitimate, but there were gaps in his employment history and concerns about his research integrity. I spent another week collecting evidence about Dr. Whitmore's illegal activities, comparing student enrollment records with visa applications and transcript requests, and the pattern became evident. He was making thousands of dollars a month by selling phony credentials to desperate international students. This was huge, not only because he was cheating on his wife and manipulating students, but also because he was committing federal fraud that could lead to serious prison time. It was time for the confrontation that would end it all. Financial records demonstrating Jessica's systematic deceit. Recordings demonstrating the affair and their schemes to defraud it. Proof of Dr. Whitmore's federal crimes. At 10:30 p.m. on a Thursday, Jessica returned from yet another late study session with a smug expression and the scent of pricey cologne, telling me she had just spent hours at the Adolphus with her professor. "How was the library?" I said nonchalantly as I glanced up from my laptop, where I had been productively organizing my evidence files despite getting exhausted. She missed the sarcasm completely. He really is. "Sam, I'm so fortunate to have a mentor who believes in my intellectual potential and sees what I could accomplish with the right opportunities. Dr. Whitmore is really pushing me to do well on this final thesis draft. He says it could determine my entire academic future and potential for doctoral programs." I closed my laptop and looked straight at her. "Jessica, we need to have a serious conversation." Her face went white when I said, "If this is about household responsibilities again, Sam, I've explained that I have a thesis deadline. It's not about chores. It's about your grandmother's trust fund." I took out my phone and played the recording, reminding her of our conversation about your family situation. Your grandmother's trust fund becomes accessible when you turn 30, which is only 18 months away. Jessica's mouth opened and closed silently. "And then you recorded me? That's completely illegal." The professor and his star student running away together is so romantic. According to my study group, who sat down heavily on the couch, their faces alternating between shock, fear, and calculation. "I can explain everything, Sam. You can't use private conversations. In fact, it's perfectly legal. This is my house, my internet connection, and my iPad. All of this is entirely legal under Texas law." I played another clip. "You don't understand our relationship. Richard and I have a genuine intellectual connection. It's not some sort of sordid affair because it sounds like fraud, which is also what your boyfriend specializes in." She looked genuinely perplexed. "What do you mean?" I pulled out a folder of documents I prepared. "Can you explain calling me your financial placeholder? Can you explain using my money to buy clothes and jewelry for your dates with your married professor? Can you explain 3 years of systematic lies while I funded your entire lifestyle?" Jessica frantically shook her head, saying, "That's not true. Richard would never do anything illegal. He's a respected professor. Dr. Richard Whitmore has been selling fake diplomas and transcripts to international students for the past 3 years. I have documentation going back 36 months showing the pattern." Richard is facing federal charges that carry 10 to 15 years in prison. Jessica and anyone associated with his schemes, including girlfriends who helped launder money through student accounts, go down with him. He's using you just like he used those international students. Jessica, I'll let that sink in for a second. I never assisted with any illegal activities. I don't know anything about fake diplomas. Maybe not directly, but the money he's been spending on fancy dinners and hotel rooms is money from federal crimes, and the gifts he's given you are also money from crimes. In legal terms, you've been receiving stolen goods. She attempted to manipulate her feelings by saying, Sam, you don't understand our connection. What Richard and I have transcends conventional relationships. We're intellectual equals working toward you. You're a naive grad student who fell for a middle-aged criminal he's married. He's a felon, and in about 12 hours, he's going to be under federal investigation. At that point, she broke down, but not out of regret or apology, but rather out of pure rage that her ideal plan was failing. You're destroying everything, she said, and you're a phony who lied to someone who loved you for 3 years. Get your belongings, Jessica. You have until Sunday to leave my house. You can't evict me. I live here. I have rights. No, you don't. You're not on the lease. You don't pay rent. You've never paid for your utilities or mortgage, and you're no longer my girlfriend. You're a guest who has overstayed her welcome. She tried every manipulation technique known to man. Sobbing, yelling, negotiating, threatening legal action, and threatening to break up with Dr. Whitmore if I would give her another chance. Over the weekend, I assisted Jessica in packing her belongings while remaining completely emotionally detached. 3 years of a relationship reduced to cardboard boxes and plastic bags. I had already transferred $75,000 from our joint accounts into my personal account, money I could prove I deposited through business income. I had also called Honda Financial and reported the Accord stolen because Jessica had been driving a car titled in my name without permission for weeks while planning to leave. The repo company picked it up from the university parking lot that Friday afternoon. Her father shook my hand firmly and said, Sam, you seem like a good man who worked hard to build something real. I'm ashamed that my daughter treated you this way. You deserve better. Her parents drove down from Shreveport to help move her belongings, and they were mortified when I explained the situation. We had no idea she was taking advantage of your generosity like this, her mother said, folding Jessica's expensive clothes. We raised her to be grateful and honest. This isn't the daughter we thought we knew. When I reported Dr. Whitmore's diploma mill operation to the federal fraud hotline, I included copies of all the evidence I had, including the recordings of his relationship with Jessica and the documented pattern of fake credentials I had discovered during my investigation. Federal investigators moved quickly, and within 5 days, Dr. Whitmore was suspended from the university pending investigation. His office was sealed, his computer and files were seized, and several international students who had purchased fake credentials were arrested for immigration fraud. The local news immediately picked up the story. After seeing the news coverage, Jessica called me in a panic. Sam, you destroyed him. Richard's entire career is over. How could you do this to us? I reported a criminal to federal authorities. Jessica, just because he was your boyfriend doesn't make fraud legal or acceptable. Within hours, Dr. Whitmore's mugshot was all over social media, along with details about his fake diploma operation and estimated profits of over $200,000 annually. When federal agents contacted Oxford University, they found no record of any sabbatical offer or application from Dr. Whitmore. It turned out that I was exactly right. He had made up the whole story to keep Jessica believing in their future together while he worked out a way to get out of his legal troubles. But what about Oxford? What about our future plans? Oxford was probably just another lie, just like everything else he told you to keep you compliant. There was no trust fund, no inheritance, no family money at all. It was all a lie to keep Jessica hopeful and compliant, while Dr. Whitmore used her for emotional validation and likely to help launder his illegal income through her student accounts. The fallout was quick and brutal for both of them. When I asked Jessica's parents directly about her grandmother's story, they looked perplexed and explained that her grandmother had passed away 10 years prior, leaving behind costume jewelry and $3,000 in a checking account. His academic career was ruined before the trial even began, and his wife, Elena, filed for divorce within a week of his arrest, taking their children and most of their assets. Dr. Whitmore was charged with 14 federal crimes, including wire fraud, immigration fraud, and money laundering. He posted bail using his house as collateral, but the university immediately fired him and revoked his tenure. The divorce was finalized in record time, leaving Dr. Whitmore with legal bills and no steady income. Jessica tried desperately to finish her thesis with a different advisor, but the scandal made it impossible. Her research had been tainted by association with Dr. Whitmore's fraudulent activities, and the University Ethics Committee suggested she might want to start over with a completely new thesis topic and advisor. It seemed that she had been looking into his behavior for months and had documented evidence of multiple affairs outside of Jessica. Her credit cards were maxed out, her parents couldn't pay for tuition, and no legitimate advisor wanted to work with a student involved in a federal fraud case. So she couldn't afford to continue her education without my financial support. She returned to Shreveport and accepted a job at a local social services office, earning $28,000 a year, a far cry from the six-figure therapeutic career she had planned, while I concentrated on rebuilding my life and my business. It turns out that removing financial deadweight benefits both relationships and balance sheets. By cutting Jessica's expenses, I was able to free up over $4,500 a month, which I then used to grow the business by hiring 3 more technicians, purchasing 2 more service trucks, and branching out into commercial refrigeration and building automation systems. That year, the company grew by 45%. Some people never learn from their mistakes, and enabling them doesn't help anyone. I also started a retirement matching program for my employees and purchased a small office building for the company headquarters. 6 months after the federal trial concluded, Dr. Whitmore was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Jessica reached out to me one last time via LinkedIn, saying she had been fired from her social services job for inappropriate relationships with clients and was seeking a short-term loan to get back on her feet while pursuing new opportunities. I didn't reply.